Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. My name is AJ, and in today's video I'm going to give you 10 good reasons why China cannot turn its back against Russia. So before I start, I just want to ask for a quick favor. Don't forget to check that you're still subscribed, and also make sure you like and share. Anything you can do to help with the algorithm, I'd really appreciate it. And if you really want to support me and you really want to support the channel, and you want to support the channel and you want to support me as a creator, and you like what I do and you want me to continue doing what I'm doing, then don't forget to join my Patreon. I've got 46 members now. I'm looking to get to 50. That would be absolutely amazing. And also, you can also buy me a coffee as well. The links are in the description. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. One reason why China is not going to turn its back on its friend Russia is trust. Trust. So Biden had a phone call with President Xi, and apparently he gave him some threats, and he said there will be consequences if Beijing supports Russia, whether it's financial support or military support. And I gotta say, this is not the way to deal with China, and it doesn't work with China with carrots and sticks. And I remember reading the transcript of the chat, and on the Chinese side, President Xi basically told Biden in his face that Biden did not keep up to his promises from the last meeting that they had. So just to remind you, from the last meeting they had a few months ago, Biden had promised to take steps to de-escalate situation between China and the US, and none of it had happened. In fact, America put more sanctions on China, and they've still been sending military ships in the Taiwanese Strait. They're still doing sending delegations to the Taiwan island, and basically everything that Biden had promised, USA was doing the opposite. So President Xi basically said in diplomatic terms, "I do not trust you, because everything you promised to me, you basically went ahead and did the opposite." So why should China trust Biden, and why should China trust America? So look at it this way. If you are in school and you have a best friend, and then you got a bully that keeps bullying you every single day, and your best friend's there helping you out, and one of these days this bully comes up to you and he says, "Listen, I want you to, backstab your friend and get rid of him for me. Otherwise there'll be consequences." What are you going to do? Are you going to listen to that bully and say, yeah, don't worry, I'll get rid of my best friend, and my best friend is not there to help anymore, so I'll just get beaten up by you and your friends every single day, shall I? And it would be really, really stupid for China to backstab Russia at this point. It makes no sense. There's no benefit to China doing that. Because once China does that, if China does that, which is never, then that means USA, NATO, AUKUS, Quad, everybody will start ganging up on China like they've done over the past 3-4 years since Trump was in power, and now Biden. Since Trump came to power, every single day there was something bad written about China. I've not seen one good article written about China over the past 4 or 5 years since Trump started his trade war. Not one. Even the Olympics they boycotted. So why do you think China is going to backstab Russia for the West? Makes no sense. No sense whatsoever. So who needs China at this point? Does the West need China, or does the Chinese need the West regarding this conflict between Russia and Ukraine? China is happily sit back being neutral. They don't need anybody. They're not going around the world asking the US, oh, you need to denounce Russia, you need to break ties with Russia, you need to place sanctions on Russia. China's not doing that. The West is doing that. They're asking China to backstab their friend, Russia, for them. They're asking China to put sanctions on Russia. They're asking China to denounce Russia for what they're doing. They're asking China to break ties with Russia. They're asking China to backstab Russia for the West. Why? Why would China do that? Why? And every single day you see articles saying China needs to denounce Russia, China needs to put sanctions on Russia, China needs to follow the West to do this. Why should China do that? What has the West done for China? The last 4 years, and trust me when I say I follow very closely what goes on between the Chinese and the Americans, and I follow every single news article very closely every single day. I am what you would call a China expert, an impartial China expert, an unbiased China expert. I'm not Chinese, but I know a lot about China. And not one article in the West was good about China. You know, first they kick out Huawei, coming up with all sorts of stories about Huawei as a security risk. Then they put all sorts of trade wars and tariffs on China. Then you had Trump being completely racist to the Chinese people, calling the coronavirus Kung Flu live. He said it live. And then he started calling it Wuhan virus and getting all of his allies to say that China released this virus on purpose when they had no reason why anyone would do that. And then they start making up stories about lab leaks. Then they start making up stories about concentration camps, 3 million Uyghurs in concentration camps in Xinjiang. I mean, 3 million. Can you imagine how many people is required to manage 3 million Uyghurs in Xinjiang? America has the highest number of prisoners, highest incarceration rate, and that is close to 2 million. So can you imagine all of these prisons, all of these prison guards, all the amount of food that you need to feed these people with, and how are you going to hide 3 million people when the Uyghur population is 12 million? So you got a quarter of the Uyghur population held in concentration camps. So don't you think the other Uyghurs in Xinjiang will start running for their lives and running towards the borders? It's ridiculous, these claims, and how people come up with such claims. And let me tell you this. China has a really, really good record when it comes to coronavirus. They have a zero COVID policy, which means anybody that gets the virus, you know, they clamp down this whole city if they have to, just to contain it. So if they hated the Uyghurs so much, wouldn't it be a good idea not to bother with any coronavirus zero COVID stuff in Xinjiang and just focus on their Han Chinese people? If you look at the records, you know, hardly anyone in Xinjiang died. The zero COVID policy is everywhere, all over China. So it doesn't make any sense. The point I'm saying is, if they didn't care about Uyghur people, why would they have zero COVID policy in Xinjiang? China cares about all its people. It's not just Uyghurs in Xinjiang. They have many, many different people with different languages, and you know, there's many people believing in different religions. All over China, there's different types of people. It's a very cosmopolitan country. It's a large country. You know, it starts from Asia, it goes all the way to Southeast Asia. It's a large country. There's so many different types of people there. Then you got stories about Tibet and people trying to break out of Tibet, trying to start riots in Tibet. And then you got the West's involvement with the Hong Kong riots. And I'm not going to even start about Taiwan. You know, Taiwan is a breakaway province of China. It's part of China. And every day you see in the news articles trying to make out that Taiwan is independent and Taiwan needs to break free from the evil CCP. And people don't forget that there is a one China policy that the US has signed, the West has agreed to, the rest of the world agrees to. It's unbelievable the amount of negative stories I see about China. And you read some of these articles, they're so disgusting, you know. And I'm not just talking about Western articles, I'm also talking about Indian as well. You know, channels such as WeOn. Absolutely disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Some of these channels are worse than Fox News and CNN. So the amount of hate that went on to China. America needed an enemy, and they saw China as an enemy. And you've seen how America's propaganda works. And once they start this propaganda stuff, the whole West, people are stupid enough to believe it. And you can see what's happening with Ukraine. People are just brainwashed. So you see, it's so easy to brainwash people. All America have to do is talk to a few newspapers and news channels and basically say, okay, release this article, tell the world that China has had a bit of a lab leak and that released coronavirus to the rest of the world. Get all of the papers to print it. Without any evidence whatsoever, with no evidence, they'll go around and print it, and that's it. You get majority of the Western world believing in it. That's what they've been doing. That's what they were doing with Ukraine. They're saying Russia is losing. Russia's lost so many tanks and airplanes. Ukraine is fighting back. Russia is losing. Russia is being held back. Russia is not being held back. Russia is not losing. I would have thought people would have learned their lessons from Iraq. The same thing happened before they went into the Iraq war. The whole Western media was going, oh, weapons of mass destruction. Even the British were saying Iraq can release weapons in 45 minutes. 45 minutes, Iraq can fire a weapon from Iraq and hit UK. Why the hell will Iraq want to do that? Why would Iraq want to fire a weapon at UK in 45 minutes? When the West has been sanctioning Iraq for years and years, they've dismantled their missile capacity. When America and the West went into Iraq the second time, Iraq had no way to defend itself. It had no missiles, no anti-aircraft, hardly any anti-aircraft missiles, hardly any weapons. Because after the first Iraq war, there was a massive, de-weaponized phase where all of their weapons were just destroyed. It's absolutely ridiculous how Western media works and how media propaganda works. And they're doing the same thing. They've done it with China, and now they're doing it in Ukraine. And I just can't believe people are just so brainwashed over and over again. Then you got this story here. Chinese promotion of Russian disinformation indicates where its loyalties lie. So I watch a lot of Chinese channels. I watch a lot of news channels. And I gotta say, they are very, very nice. And even though the fact that America had been placing all of these sanctions on China, trying to humiliate China, trying to ridicule China, and the Olympic Games, that was a pure embarrassment. They boycotted the Olympics game, China's pride and joy, and the West boycott it. And then you go to the China for help. So what this article is trying to say is all of these lies by Western media, all of these propaganda and the fact that Russia is losing and all of this stuff is not spread in the Chinese media because they can see right through it. Why would they spread lies and propaganda? They can see right through it. Because they were the victims of the past 4 years. They've seen the amount of lies and propaganda that was going against China and the Chinese people. And now they're saying they are promoting Russian disinformation. No, Chinese people are not stupid. I talk to a lot of Chinese people, a lot. I have a lot of Chinese followers and I speak to them every single day. They are very, very intelligent people. And they have had enough of all of these lies and disinformation coming out of the West. It's not that media or China is blocking anything in China. You know, they have a much better open media over there. What they like to report is the truth. They don't like to spread all of these lies and propaganda because they know it's lies and propaganda. And the people know it as well. People are not stupid. The West thinks Chinese people are stupid. And they would believe anything like the West does. No! The Chinese are some of the most intelligent people I've ever spoken to. They have got it completely wrong. Not only against China, Chinese media, but also about Chinese people. And they have been underestimating China for years. They think whatever they say and do, China will say, yes, master, whatever you want, master, like a slave. It comes down to the imperialistic days when the West used to tell China what to do and where to go. But it's not like that anymore. China's risen up. China's not going to listen to the West anymore. And because they don't, the West can't take it. They absolutely can't take it. And you see all of these articles everywhere about China needs to renounce Russia's invasion. China needs to do this. China needs to do that. Why should China do that? Why should they listen to you? You've humiliated them so much over the past few years. Absolutely humiliated them. I'm not Chinese, but I've seen the articles that are coming out every single day. Every day. And it's only like a few months ago when you boycotted China's Olympics. So why would China listen to anything that the West says? Why would China go along with anything the West says? And let me tell you something. This war between Russia and Ukraine, who do you think caused it? It was caused because of NATO. NATO caused it and the United States caused it. They are the sole people who are responsible. If NATO had said, okay, we understand Russia's security concerns, we're not going to add Ukraine to NATO, so let's kind of talk about this diplomatically, that would have done it. That would have solved the issue. But NATO pushed this war, Americans pushed this war. And now because America and all its allies have placed all of these sanctions on Russia, they're thinking, oh man, what the hell have we done? We've not only sanctioned Russia, we've sanctioned ourselves. We're gonna ruin our own economy, especially the Europeans. They must be sitting at home, sleeping in their beds and staring at the ceiling, thinking, what the hell have they done? Because they've placed all of these sanctions on Russia, they're gonna ruin their own economy, and they want China to be involved as well. They want to ruin China's economy. But China's too clever for that. They're like, nope, sorry, you put yourselves in that situation. Don't ask us for help after everything you've done. The reason why China is not going to turn its back on Russia is to counter US hegemony. So I don't know if many of you remember, but a few months ago, Russia and China released a joint statement. And in that statement, they described how they were going to create a new world order based on international rules, not America's rule-based order. And they were completely against what America's doing in terms of throwing democracy around the world, ignoring countries with human rights abuses, which are their friends, but any country which does do human rights abuses, they will say they are a democracy and they are a friend of US and they'll be ignored. But any country which is not a friend of the US gets sanctioned, they make up stories about human rights, and that country gets isolated or even attacked. So they have seen America's actions over the past 100 years, all of the wars that they have been involved in, the the way the world is right now, and Russia and China agree that they have had enough of it. So they created this joint statement how they're going to work together, counter the US hegemony, and create a new world order. And they put a lot of effort and a lot of work into planning this, into how they're going to do it. It's a long-term project. It's not something that can be done in weeks or months or years even. It could take decades. But China and Russia are going to be working on this plan together long-term. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever for China to stab its friend in the back right now and destroy this plan. Because once China turns its back on Russia, Russia's going to be severely impacted with the sanctions. Because one of the things Russia is not being impacted right now is because even though Europeans and Americans have placed sanctions on Russia, China has not placed any sanctions on Russia. So Russia will continue doing the same trade with China and the same trade with India. Plus, they will do more trade with the trade that Europeans and Americans have lost with China and with India and with the rest of the world. So Russia's not going to lose long term. In fact, Russia's going to win long term. And they know that. So if China puts sanctions on Russia, that would be the end of Russia, because they can't sell their products to China, they can't buy products from China, and they will completely collapse. And that's what the US wanted. And if Russia collapses, that's it. Basically China's going to be back in America's crosshairs again, and you will see America and its allies start putting lots of negative things about China every single day, and they will take out China piece by piece, piece by piece. Right now, China and Russia together are very strong, economically, militarily, and the West know that. And they will do whatever they can to split that relationship. And they know that there is a new world order coming, and they will try and break that new world order at any cost. So it's not happening, not on China's watch and not on Russia's watch. So there is no way China would betray its friend just because of what America wants. Number 3, the 100-year humiliation. So one of the things that China feels is the West does not understand China. To understand China, you have to understand the history, and especially the 100-year humiliation that China had suffered because of the West. So those who don't know what the 100-year humiliation is when the British West at the time started 2 opium wars with China, took over Hong Kong by force. There was no democracy in Hong Kong. The British took it over. Hundreds and thousands of Chinese were killed. The British marched into the Summer Palace and completely burnt it to the ground. And the Summer Palace is very, very, very upsetting to a lot of Chinese people, because that palace was the most beautiful palace in China at the time. The British basically burnt it to the ground. They stole loads of treasures. So many people died of famine as well. China had also suffered from civil wars. They also had suffered from occupation from Japan. And then also there's the Taiwan issue as well. And China went through a lot in that 100 years, and that's why they call it the 100-year humiliation. Fortunately for China, they have risen from that 100-year humiliation, and they have risen with a lot of strength. And there's a saying that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So you have a new generation of Chinese people who have grown up from that 100-year humiliation. They have grown up much stronger, much wiser. And this is the reason why China is excelling in every field out there. And this is why they want to become self-dependent. And this is why they are building up their military, because they want to make sure this 100-year humiliation never ever happens again. And the cause of the 100-year humiliation is down to the West. And China blames the West completely for that. And they will never forget it. And even to this day, they feel like they are still being humiliated. Every single day they are being humiliated. When Trump calls them coronavirus Kung Flu, when they start blaming China for spreading it out on the world on purpose, all of these lies about Xinjiang and, Hong Kong, and also all of these humiliation acts by Taiwan even. The fact that West is trying to humiliate China by pushing for Taiwanese independence. There's so many things. And this is one of them. When Biden comes on a telephone call with President Xi and threatens him, saying there's going to be consequences if you help Russia. Well, let me tell you something. America and the West is helping Ukraine. They are sending weapons, they are sending volunteers, mercenaries, people, money. They are supporting Ukraine in every single way to fight Russia. So why can't Beijing support its friend, Russia, in the same way? Why can't they, if they're friends? If it was a war between UK and Ukraine, you can guarantee that America would help UK win that war. They will give UK whatever it needs to win that war. So if you're a friend and your friend is in trouble, wouldn't you come to help? And a lot of people don't realize why India is so loyal to Russia. A lot of people don't realize the history of Russia and India. At the time when Bangladesh was having a war with Pakistan, and Pakistan was destroying Bangladesh to the ground, Bangladesh was very, very inferior compared to Pakistan. At the time, Pakistan was a very, very Western nation. It had a lot of friends in the West, including America, including Europe, and it had a lot of friends, including China even at the time. And India at the time, they wanted to go to war with Pakistan, but Pakistan had so many friends in the West, and India had no choice but to start this war. And then what did America do? America started sending ships to the Indian coast, submarines, even other Western countries joined in as well. And India sent out an SOS to the rest of the world saying, we need help. No country came to help India except Russia, or Soviet Union at the time. They sent nuclear submarines in that Indian water, and they said to America and its allies, if you start a war with India, we will attack, we will join in, we will help India. And India won that war with Pakistan. And now things have changed, and Pakistan is no longer in favor of the West anymore. As you know, with geopolitics, everything changes year after year. But India has never forgotten that time when Russia came to help India. So why would India suddenly backstab their friend who came in their moment of need, the only country that came into moment of need? The whole point I'm trying to make is history is very, very important if you want to understand China. And history has shown China that the West cannot be trusted. And China trusted the West once. When President Nixon came to China in the 1970s, he agreed the One China principle, that Taiwan is a part of China and China is a part of Taiwan. It's one country, but different provinces. And both China, mainland, and Taiwan, island of Taiwan, agreed this, and Americans. But since then, they broke that agreement time and time again. They have been arming Taiwan. They have been pushing for independence for Taiwan. And every time Beijing tries to interfere, the US would send their aircraft carriers right on the Taiwanese Strait to stop Beijing from doing anything. This is why Beijing has been building up his navy. There will come a time when Chinese navy is even more powerful than the American Navy. Right now, okay, the American Navy's got, all these aircraft carriers, and in tonnage they are much more powerful. But it doesn't count for anything. Once China's hypersonic missiles are mature enough, these aircraft carriers would be sunk easily. For $1 trillion aircraft carrier and hit by a $500,000 hypersonic missile, just work out the cost differences. America would lose more. They would lose more, and they would lose more lives. But there will come a time when China's Navy is just as powerful as US Navy. But the fact that USA and the West have still tried to, humiliate China, even to this day. And Taiwan is very, very important to the Chinese. Very important. Because Taiwan is their last part of their 100-year humiliation, which they want to put to a close once and for all. And I say it's the last part of their 100-year humiliation is because when they had a civil war, the Kuomintang party had moved across to Taiwan, and they claim to this day that they are in charge of all of China, not just Taiwan, but all of mainland as well. So China feels that Taiwan is still part of China, and if they lose Taiwan, then that is something that the Chinese people cannot take. Because for them to finally get over their 100-year humiliation, they need to reunify Taiwan with the rest of the mainland. And this is their final piece of jigsaw. And the final piece of jigsaw for President Xi. And even President Xi said that he will not put the issue of Taiwan to the next president. He will make sure before he leaves office that the Taiwan issue is resolved. And he said if Taiwan declares independence, then he will go to war. And he made it very clear. It's nothing like the Ukrainian war. Chinese have made it very clear if Taiwan goes for independence, they will go for war. And even Taiwan doesn't have to go for independence. If suddenly US starts making moves, for example, US starts saying Taiwan is a sovereign state and completely go over their one China policy, and they start building military bases in Taiwan like they have in Okinawa or Korea. If they start doing things like that, then China will attack. They will go to war. And the Chinese people do understand that huge sacrifice. China will probably, in terms of economy, will probably destroy itself by attacking Taiwan. Because America and the West will place exactly the same sanctions on China. But fortunately, they will also sanction themselves as well. It's not just China that's going to be affected. The rest of the world is going to be affected. But they're not worried about that. The only worry for China is a lot of the new generation are single kids. Because of the one China policy, a lot of parents have only one child. So if your only child dies in war, you can't, spread your family anymore. Your generation is dead. That's the main worry for the Chinese. But a lot of parents have come forward and said, if the Taiwan declares independence, I will gladly send my only child to war, and it's a sacrifice worth taking. Not just, even if it ends my generation, for the future generation of all of China, including Taiwan, is for the best. And that's what a lot of parents are saying. They would gladly sacrifice their one child to reunify Taiwan. So it's very, very important to China. It's the most important issue. See, to understand China, you have to understand the 100-year humiliation and why they make decisions like they are making. So there is no way they will backstab their friend for the West. Because they know one day
the West will gang up on China. And this time, China's not going to have their friend Russia to help them. They'll be all alone. So it makes no sense for them to stab Russia in the back. No sense whatsoever. So it's not going to happen. Number 4, security. China is completely surrounded by the first island chain. You got US allies everywhere, including Japan, South Korea, Philippines, even Singapore. And China needs Russia for security because you also got American allies like AUKUS, which is Britain and Australia, and you've also got the Quad, and then you got NATO saying they're going to expand eastwards and China is a threat. So China's got a threat coming from all angles, from all over the world. So if China was by itself, it would be isolated, and America and its allies would take pieces off China bit by bit. And if there was a war, they would be attacked on all corners, on all fronts. So China and Russia gives China a huge buffer. Russia offers China so much protection than what the West realizes. First of all, Russia's got 6,000 nuclear weapons. And if America or the West decide to throw any nuclear weapons at China, China would be covered by Russian nuclear umbrella as well. So they would do everything they can to protect China from any nuclear attacks. Second, if there was a war in the Taiwanese Strait and the rest of the West get together and block off all of China's trade access points, I'm talking about the Malacca Strait and the choke points in the Middle East, and China would be forced to only trade using the roads. So Russia would be able to provide China with all the raw materials, oil, everything that China needs to carry on fighting. Because one of the reasons Japan failed in its war in the Second World War is because America had completely choked Japan up to the point where Japan could not import any oil. It had run out of oil, it had run out of raw materials, and it had no choice but to surrender because America and its allies had pretty much choked Japan. And China has looked at this and it's not going to allow anything like this. So one of the reasons why the BRI scheme was built was because if America decides to choke China of all of its trade routes, and China is one of the biggest importers of oil, gas, and raw materials, food, then China would be heavily impacted. So the BRI scheme is basically allows China to transport oil, gas along the road. It doesn't need to go through the sea, and Russia is a big part of that. And if China decides to stab Russia in the back, they will pretty much lose most of the BRI because most of the BRI goes through Russia, or Russia's involved with some of the Central Asian countries. So it doesn't make any sense why China would stab Russia in the back. And any reporter or anybody in the West that think China would do so, they just don't know their geopolitics, they don't know their history, they don't know anything about the world. They probably don't even know their geography. So Russia's got a massive port in Vladivostok, which is next to North Korea and also next to China. And if any help is required by China, Russia would be able to send a lot of ships from Vladivostok to help China in the time of need. And they would keep people like Japan busy, because right now there are border issues between Japan and Russia. So any involvement in the Taiwanese Strait, and if Japan thinks it can get involved in the war with China, it will have to think about Russia as well, because Russia is right on its doorstep. And also it will stop other countries from joining as well, countries like Philippines, Singapore, Korea, which are very big US allies. But if a war ever came and push comes to shove and US says you gotta be involved, these countries will look at China and they will look at Russia and think, I don't think so, mate. I don't want you to use us as guinea pigs while you guys are all the way there in another continent while we're the ones getting bombed. I don't think so. So these countries will think twice before joining in any war in the Taiwanese Strait. So it's very important for Russia to be part of Chinese security alignment. And the partnership between the two goes way beyond economic sense. It goes beyond military sense as well. What they are beyond allies. They are beyond friends. It's a friendship and an understanding based on mutual trust, mutual benefit, and mutual friendship. And they are not going to break that for the West, not for any means. What they are beyond allies. They are beyond friends. It's a friendship and an understanding based on mutual trust, mutual benefit, and mutual friendship. And they are not going to break that for the West, not for any means. Number 5, BRI. So China and Russia are heavily involved in China's BRI project. There is a railway line that goes from China through Russia into Europe, and there's also railway lines, pipelines, roads going from China through to Russia, through Central Asia. And a lot of these countries in Central Asia are also have heavily Russian influence as well, so China needs their help for that. And the most important thing, they need Russia's help for the Arctic sea route. So once the global warming starts melting a lot of ice caps around the Arctic, there will be a new route coming to fruition, and Russia is going to be the main country that has that's going to have control over that route. They will have loads of ports set up, military as well, installations, and China is working with Russia, setting up also other ports as well. They're going to be working together in the Arctic route. They're going to be working together in the BRI land routes as well, the sea routes. So they have trillions and trillions dollars worth of investments together working on the BRI, and they are not going to destroy that dream just to make the West happy. They are not going to do that. 6. Military and civilian projects. So China and Russia, believe it or not, have got over hundreds of billions worth of projects they're working together on. And it goes from military, they're working on nuclear subs together, they're working on joint helicopters together, they're working on joint ships together, working on joint missiles as well. And their military is going to be compatible with each other. They have been doing military drills on a regular basis. Russian military personnel have been checking up on Chinese technology and vice versa, and they are finding ways to coordinate with each other and make it interoperable with each other as well. The same way that the West, NATO and the US military kind of joins together and they're all linked. For example, radar systems, and they basically work with each other. It doesn't matter whether it's a European model or a US model. It'll work the same way, and they can link with each other, communicate with each other, for example. So the same way Russia and Chinese militaries are linking up together as well. They're also having a lot of projects in terms of civilian projects. They're building brand new airlines together, which is going to be out by 2025. They're also building nuclear power stations in China, working on that together. There are many joint projects, and it's not going to destroy all of these projects. It's working with Russia just because the US says to turn its back on Russia. It's not going to do that. And USA must think Chinese are going to be really stupid if they do. Realistically, it's not going to happen. Number 7, Taiwan. So I've briefly mentioned Taiwan before, but indeed it is on subject because if there is a war happening in the Taiwanese Strait between mainland China and the island of Taiwan, China will heavily require Russia's help. Number one, they will need help militarily, just just to basically keep countries like Japan, South Korea, Philippines, and Singapore, put them off from joining the American-led war. Secondly, they will need Russia's help for raw materials, oil and gas to be transferred to China, because one of the things that the West will try and do is to stop all oil and gas shipments to China via the sea. They will block a lot of the shipments. They did that with Japan in World War II, but China has other options. It has land links with Russia, so hopefully Russia can supply China with all the oil and gas that it needs. Thirdly, and which is very important, not a lot of people realize this, but they need Russia's help for a nuclear deterrence. So there's a big chance that if there is a war that happens between China and the United States, it could easily escalate to a nuclear war. But if Russia is on China's side, Russia can be a huge deterrent from America firing any nukes near China, because Russia is a deterrent, but also China is going to be a deterrent as well. So if America's got 6,000 nukes at the moment pointing towards Russia, Russia's got 6,000 nukes pointing towards America and also some at Europe as well. But China is building its own nukes. So can you imagine if China builds, say, even 1,000 would be enough. America's got to have a huge issues, because not only will they have to point 6,000 nukes at Russia, they'll have to point another 6,000 at China. So if China builds their nuke capacities to 6,000, same as Russia, America will have to build 12,000 nukes, 6,000 at Russia, 6,000 at China. And Russia and China are not going to sit back and let America have 12,000 nukes. Russia's going to want to have 12,000 nukes. And then China's going to want to have 12,000 nukes. Then altogether, there's going to be 24,000 nukes. Then America will have to build another 12,000. Can you see the point? You see, America cannot afford to fight a nuclear war on two fronts. You just can't. This is a huge issue for the United States. And they cannot point 6,000 at Russia, 6,000 at China. They just can't do it. And China doesn't have that issue at the moment. I mean, they can have 1,000 hypersonic nuclear weapons. They don't even need 6,000. And America will have to upgrade all of its nuclear weapons. And upgrading your nuclear weapons is much more expensive than building it from scratch. Because you've got to dismantle everything. You've got to start everything from beginning. And it's a long process, and it's an expensive process, and there is no way America can afford to do this, to fight a nuclear war on two fronts. It just can't. Number 8, mutual respect. A lot of people underestimate the friendship between Russia and China, especially the West. The West cannot understand the friendship that's going on between Russia and China, and they think they can break it by asking China to backstab its friend. They just don't understand China. They don't understand Russia. They don't understand the deep level of friendship that they have. President Xi called Putin his best friend, and they have met countless of times, more than a dozen times throughout their time as leaders, and they trust each other. And not only are they great leaders who get along and understand each other and also have the same foreign policy. The Chinese people and the Russian people, they love each other. You can see from all of the social media, you can see from all the news, and you can chat to a lot of Chinese people as well. They understand Russian, they support Russia. You're not going to see Chinese people demonstrating in China for Russia's conflict in Ukraine. You're not going to see that. Chinese people are 100% behind Russia. So there is no way China's going to backstab Russia because the people don't want it. The leadership don't want it. The country doesn't want it. And there is such a mutual respect between the two countries. They have the same foreign policy. They agree on almost everything. In the UN, they agree with everything. In their foreign policy, they agree with everything. And when it comes to the West just looks down on China. The West looks down on China like it's a poodle or a slave. There's no mutual trust. There's no mutual respect between the West and China. And you can see the way that Biden is talking to President Xi. Talking about consequences, talking about threats. That is not the way to talk to the Chinese. That is not the way to talk to Chinese people. Americans have been insulting Chinese people for years now. They look down on them. And you can see the amount of Chinese people that get beaten up or hurt or killed around the world. Anti-Chinese violence against Chinese people. Chinese people have had enough of the West. The way that they've been treated. And majority of the Chinese people actually support Russia in this. So there is no way China is going to go back against Russia, go back against the will of its people, go back on the will of its leaders. There is no way. It's not going to happen. Oil and gas and food and raw materials. So Russia provides China with a lot of gas. There's one pipeline being fed into China from Russia, and they're building three more. And they're also sending a lot of oil to China. They're selling a lot of wheat and agricultural stuff to China, and they're also selling a lot of raw materials to China as well, which China needs for its technology, for EVs, semiconductors, for example. So Russia has got a lot of raw materials. You can see by the amount of land that Russia has, around Siberia. And with global warming, a lot of these permafrost is starting to melt, and they'll have huge amounts of agriculture. And every year, the trade between Russia and China is growing, over 100 billion a year. A couple of years ago, it started around 80 billion, and last year it's gone up to 200 billion, and they're saying that by the end of this year, it's going to probably go up to 300 billion, and it's just growing year by year. And more Russian farmers are making things like soybeans, stuff that Chinese people want. So instead, China's not going to bother buying it from America anymore pretty soon, because a lot of Russian farmers are going to provide soybeans and everything that China requires. So China is trying to be independent away from America and away from the West, and Russia provides everything that China needs and wants. So why would China turn its back against Russia when you have a huge country with raw materials, and China will gladly and happily take as much raw materials as Russia can provide. It's a dream come true, dream partnership. China's got the technology and Russia's got all of the raw materials. China's got the economics and the finance, and Russia's got all the oil and gas. You see, and China's got all of the people. You got 1.4 billion people, and Russia's got all of the food. It's a marriage made in heaven. You just can't go wrong. They are perfect for each other. It's like yin and yang. It's a perfect match. There is no way that China will want to turn its back on Russia. This is what China has always wanted. And China has realized that it made a huge mistake in the 1970s, turning back on Russia at the time when Nixon came to China and promised China the world, promised China about the One China policy, and China turned its back on Russia. And they have regretted it ever since. But it's not going to happen again. The West is not going to turn Russia or China away from each other ever again, because they've realized the West cannot be trusted. They've trusted them once, and it's not going to happen again. Never. 10 space. I know this is a very similar thing to earlier when I spoke about Russian and Chinese cooperation in military and civilian aspects, but I wanted to have this separately because it's a completely different subject. China and Russia have got huge ambitions in space, huge ambitions. Russia's got the experience and China's got the money, and together they'll be a match made in heaven. Russia's got a lot of experience into International Space Station, and China is just picking up experiences in space. They have huge, huge goals in space, huge goals they're working on together. They're going to be building a space station. Obviously, there's a Chinese space station at the moment, but they're also going to be building another one near the moon. They're going to build a moon base. They're going to be doing research on the moon base together. They're also going to be looking at mining the moon, and there's huge amounts of mining potential in the moon and space and beyond. You know, there's a huge world out there, and China and Russia will be working on this together, and it's an amazing project because you know a lot of materials you cannot get from Earth, you can get from space. I'm talking about helium 3 and many different isotopes of hydrogen, even uranium, and you can get lots of rare earth minerals as well, not just from the moon but from asteroids and comets. And they'll be working on this together. So rather than mining on the earth and raising the pollution CO2, you can actually mine for these chemicals and materials and raw materials in space, in the moon and asteroids and beyond. And it's a way to grow the human race and human civilization, go to different worlds, go to Mars even in the future, and go beyond that. And they'll be working on this together and building up technologies for space, building up the next generation of spacecrafts. And it's a very, very exciting time. And the only two people who have signed up for this is Russia and China. And they're going to be doing this together. The West have not gone along with it. The West has got its own moon mission, obviously, but that looks like it's going to be delayed. There's also budget issues. There's also issues with SpaceX as well, and Blue Origin, which is who have been taking SpaceX and NASA to court. So there's a lot of red tape when it comes to the West, but China is going ahead and doing it. China has built a space station in record time. And they're going to be going to the moon in 2025, and by 2030 they'll have a presence in the moon with the moon base. And they're also talking about building a telescope in the moon as well. They're also talking about building escalator, a space escalator or a space elevator. There's a lot of technologies that are coming out of China and Russia, and they can only do that by working together. And space is the next generation, the next future for the young people who are going to be growing up. Eventually, we will have to go out and above, beyond Earth, and we're going to have to explore new worlds and, like Star Trek, explore our solar system or go beyond our solar system, because there is a huge, huge universe out there. And America had started putting a man on the moon years ago, and obviously they've gone to the Mars with rovers and things like that. So America has made great strides. So it's time now to make new strides, and building a base on the moon would be an amazing achievement for humankind. And maybe even if Elon Musk goes to Mars, builds a colony there, even that would be amazing. But space is the future. There's a huge, huge universe out there, and who knows? One day, somebody might discover another planet like planet Earth, and we might terraform it or move into it, and we might, as us humans, might move into different planets and things like that. Who knows? There's a lot of things out there to do in space, but unfortunately, we'll have to survive that, and we're going to have to survive this planet. And there's a lot of problems in this planet. There's obviously, if there's a nuclear war, we could destroy ourselves, or there's the climate change as well. If we go beyond 2 degrees or 3 degrees hotter, parts of the world will be unlivable, and there'll be a lot of issues when the earth gets hotter. So we gotta kind of survive this generation, and I think the next few generations, there's a really good future out there. So I'm gonna end it here now, guys. I've given you the 10 reasons. Let me know if you agree with me or not, and let me know what your thoughts are. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to join my Patreon if you really like me and really like my channel, and you really like my content. Or you can buy me a coffee and support me that way. So without further ado, I'm gonna say my goodbyes, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now.